let's get started. So welcome and thank you again for joining us today to hear how to elevate your business with SAP's S4HANA and SAP RISE. I'm Rick Bushnell, coming to you today from outside of Philadelphia, close to our corporate offices in Princeton. And just a little bit about Pronix, if you're not already familiar. Pronix is well known for expertise in application development, cloud IT, QA testing, and DevOps. And we design and implement data management and digital transformation programs. Also, we provide IT talent to augment your IT teams. With over 85% of our consultants here in the US, Pronix has become a leader in talent in your time zone and even your location. So let me get started by introducing Kishore Danpudi, President of Pronix, and Kishore has assembled a panel of industry thought leaders to discuss SAP RISE, what it is and what it isn't. So Kishore, if you want to introduce the panelists for us.
Sure. Thank you, Rick, and thank you all gentlemen for joining. So with me I have Christoph. Christoph is a partner at 4TM Partners. So they provide a CIO and CTO services for enterprise clients. And I have Dharma, he's from IBM. He's a global CTO for SAP Managed Services. And I have Guru, he's account executive at SAP. He predominantly works in the federal space for aerospace and defense for SAP implementations. And I have Stephen Moore, he's enterprise solution architect as well as applications and infrastructure architect, focusing on SAP. So thank you all for joining in. And so we have very good experts going to share industry insights. So I have Stephen and Christoph from client's perspective in terms of consuming the services, whereas Dharma and Guru from advisory perspective in terms of providing consulting and solutions to various enterprise clients. So with that, I think we can get started.
Great, thanks, and thank you all for joining us. So as we get into the conversation, feel free to put questions in LinkedIn and we will look at those questions. Particularly, we'll look to put them and answer them at the end of the conversation. So let's get underway. Guru, I kind of wanted to start with you kind of as SAP. If you could spend a little time clarifying, I get lots of questions and a little bit of uncertainty. Exactly what is S4HANA RISE and what is it not? So can you help us understand what was the problem that SAP was looking to address when they brought RISE to market?
Thank you, Rick. And again, thank you, Kishore, for putting together a fantastic panel here. And I'm honored to represent SAP here. So, Rick, I think what we want to do is just give a basic understanding. I mean, SAP has been in the ERP space for the last 50 years, 51 to be exact. And all through these 5 decades, SAP has been at the tip of innovation, having pioneered ERP as a solution for enterprise customers. And through the journey, they have continued to innovate while becoming the largest ERP provider in the world. And this basically shows a level of trust that our customers have embedded within SAP for their ERP operations. And part of the trust, of course, comes from our customers, knowing that SAP can handle their most robust business processes in order to make our customers stay competitive and provide their own secret sauce to be leading within their industries. What does SAP RISE offer? How is it different? I mean, it starts back with a few more years. Back in 2010, I joined SAP. It also happened to be the year when SAP released HANA. At that time, HANA was seen as the leading in-memory database platform powering SAP ERP. And it was more or less an adrenaline that was needed to allow real-time analytics to be performed on top of millions and billions of rows of data from the ERP systems. But over the years, since SAP released S4HANA, they've taken it to a different level in which SAP S4HANA can not only deliver the real-time analytics, but it can actually provide insight to action. It allowed the companies to become intelligent enterprise so that they are able to become the best. They are able to handle business operations at a speed, and they are able to strategically place their their job operations in a manner wherein they are empowering the user to know what they are doing and being able to achieve those in the right manner. So what it also meant was our customers were looking for two things from SAP. They know that SAP provides amazing software. With S4HANA, a lot of things that never used to exist were able to become standard. In the years between 2015 and 23, significant amount of features were released. And the features were released at a speed at which it was not easy for our customers to consume it in the level that they would already be behind some of the innovations that SAP has released. So they were looking for two things. They were looking for flexibility and they were looking for accountability. They wanted SAP to be able to provide them with a platform or a medium in which the innovation that is coming from SAP can be consumed and tailored towards the areas where they are going towards. And what RISE is more or less that medium that allows them to be on top of the innovation sphere. As over the years, in the last few years, as the hyperscalers start to become more and more available for enterprise software to be consumed, SAP made it a point that it might be more important for our customers to not just be given a software and then have them deal with implementing it, but take more ownership in partnering with them and ensuring that they are able to consume the innovation that we provide. Okay. So it's pretty much the RISE becomes a mechanism for which customers are able to leverage software as a service in a cloud-based environment with managed services as well as software to be consumed as a service.
Great. Okay. Well, it becomes more clear, which is terrific. I think that helps everybody. So yeah, I think there are three main components of RISE, right? I mean, there's one, obviously the software, S4HANA at the core. And secondly, you have the infrastructure. As part of RISE, they also get a choice of a hyperscaler that they can look into deploy it on. They are not paying for the infrastructure per se, but they are able to leverage a choice of GCP or Azure or AWS or even premium suppliers like IBM, on top of which S4HANA is delivered. Now, what happens is, in addition to the software and the infrastructure, they also get a managed services component in which keeping the lights on, taking care of the mundane job, daily routines that need to be done to allow them to focus on their mission. Customers are able to completely focus on leveraging the output of what S4HANA has got to offer rather than having to keep doing the mundane job. So that becomes an easier way to consume what S4HANA has got to offer. And what happens is, as part of RISE, I mean, what it is not is, definitely it's not an acronym, but it is a way wherein they are able to also leverage some of the tools that are bundled with it in order to make that journey from their existing ERP, whether it is ECC or a non-SAP ERP, into S4HANA, making that journey very clear. They're able to leverage some of the tools and services. For example, Signavio, they help to understand where are the business process areas that need to be maximized in terms of what the software has got to offer within their own context. And secondly, where can they move their innovations towards with the BTP business technology platform, providing that medium to leverage that. And finally, in terms of ensuring that they can have their a hassle-free experience, what RISE also offers is an SLA-bound offering, which means that we are responsible for ensuring that the solution is available, and it's an application level availability. It's not just a system availability, but it is at an application level. People are able to use the service that is available for them. Okay. So good.
That's, yeah.
I think that's very helpful for the whole rest of the conversation. Perfect, I appreciate it. So Christoph, I think you've sat in that executive role a lot of times in a lot of different companies, and been thinking about how you're going to do the digital transformation and change the organization. But I'm curious, how do you measure success when you're deploying SAP inside of an organization?
Excellent question, Rick. At Fortium Partners, our senior leaders have, as you said, sat in these positions across the largest companies in this country, and have been part of this decision-making process. As you might imagine, there are numerous reasons why such a change is introduced, why a new ERP system is implemented. Can be anything from a technology debt where the old environment has become so much trouble that something must be done. Sure. And all the way to a major digital transformation. In almost all cases, you find the need for a very strong business case, a very strong ROI. And I've seen the ROI expectations drop over the last few years significantly, and have faced a number of implementations where the expectation, not just for ERP, but also for ERP, went to less than 18 months. And that's just on the financial front. There are also a large number of business KPIs that are the result of a digital transformation, or IT KPIs. For example, on the IT front, reduction of the TCO, reduction of SG&A, reduction of the number of customizations in a system. We all remember those days when we were landlocked in implementation because we had so many customizations that no significant change could be introduced. Application portfolio rationalization has been on almost everybody's objective list for a large number of years. And reducing the number of systems through a capable, full-fledged ERP often is an objective. More important, though, essential in my mind are the business objectives, because a technology-driven ERP implementation is risky. So having strong business leadership, strong business championship is extremely important. And the typical business objectives that go with that, my background is manufacturing almost exclusively. So we're talking about inventory turns, we are talking about inventory levels, we're talking about forecast accuracy, we're talking about touchless processing on payments, purchase orders, sales orders, or so these are typically KPIs that are set as part of a business case. They are usually valued, monetized, and set an expectation that comes with a commitment from the respective business leader to achieve these goals within a reasonable period of time. And then they are typically measured post-go live to make sure that the ROI has been achieved. More recently, with the advent of SaaS solutions, we've seen objectives like industry standard business process to be implemented, no customizations, low code, no coding, workflows, robotic process automation, personalization only or configuration only instead of developing custom code that, as I mentioned before, prevents us from effectively introducing innovation, which really leads me to my bottom line from a goal perspective, and this is speed to value, which translates often into cost to value, and the ability to actually make significant business improvements, implement solutions that help us to significantly improve bottom line, top line, or any other performance in between has become paramount. So in other words, to be able to deliver those solutions faster at lower cost is, I think, the overriding principle, which is pretty easy to measure, by the way, because if you commit to a 6 months implementation time frame, you either deliver in 6 months or you don't.
Sure. Okay, terrific. Well, Stephen, that brings me to you as a solutions architect. How are you taking Christoph's kind of vision, goals, expectation, and then you have to match it with reality, right? And make these things happen inside of an organization and then with a vendor. So I was curious about if you tell us a little bit about that process from your point of view, and how has RISE changed the way that you think about SAP particularly?
Okay. Well, as a solutions architect, my role is to bridge the gap between the executive goals and the technical solutions. I do this by understanding the business objectives and translating those into actionable requirements for the HANA migration.
Okay.
When it comes to SAP's S4HANA migration, SAP's RISE offering actually has a significant impact on the approach that I use. RISE provides a comprehensive and integrated package that combines technology, services, and support, making it easier for businesses to migrate to HANA. So by leveraging RISE, I can align these executive goals with predefined processes, accelerators, and best practices provided by SAP. This enables me to streamline the migration journey. It will help reduce the risks and ensure a successful implementation. SAP RISE also allows for, as Christoph said, a faster time to value by providing a unified customer experience and simplifying the deployment and the adoption of the HANA Enterprise. The packaged offerings includes not only the necessary software licenses, but it also includes cloud hosting, infrastructure management, as Guru mentioned earlier, and ongoing support. So this is going to enable the businesses to focus on their core competencies while relying on SAP's expertise and robust infrastructure. It basically takes all of the heavy lifting off of the customer and the client. So RISE provides an opportunity for businesses to access new innovations and capabilities offered by SAP as well. This, I have found, aligns with executives' primary goals of driving digital transformation, improving operational efficiency, and gaining a competitive edge in the market. So this pretty much checks all of those boxes.
Nice. That's good. It sounds like it's delivering on probably the vision that the Guru and SAP kind of outlined. It's nice when you hear it, it is actualized and you are experiencing it. Dharma, I think that brings me to you with, as you're doing SAP implementations and engagements at IBM with customers, I'm curious if you'd tell us a little bit about what's changed. Like in a recent example, what are you doing differently with a client because of RISE? I think you might be on mute.
Yes, you're right. That's the mute option. Thank you for that. So yes, I think there's been some great context set in terms of what RISE can do or cannot do and all that stuff, right? And so far we've heard a lot about what it can do and the great things about it. But when you look at it from a customer's perspective, right? I mean, right now, the way when we have a conversation with the clients, especially when we engage or when I talk to the CXOs to try and say, how can RISE help them? The context what they're looking for is, what are you going to be able to help with from a business outcome point of view? Because they already have realized the fact that RISE can give them a great platform. So they already know that the technical managed services, the hosting has already been addressed, right? So it's about looking for that intelligent enterprise, like Guru has mentioned. It's about how can you really talk to us about what can you bring to the table in terms of my sustainability requirements? What sorts of apps can you bring, right? What do you actually have built already from a GenAI point of view? For example, what sorts of services within RISE are you going to help me with, which can help me speed up the process of adopting the overall adoption of my S4HANA? How can you speed up the automation? What can you do to empower my business so that I'm less worried about my systems and I'm more worried about my outcomes, which means that when I log into my systems as a CXO, I would like to see how my business is performing, what my actual user journeys are looking like, rather than earlier where I was focused on, oh, what is my system availability, right? Do I have downtimes today? Or what sorts of issues am I going to face from a scalability point of view to address my demographic events or some of my regional activities which I need to focus on for various campaigns running, right? And what we have experienced is clients are fully aware of the recently announced, I'm not sure if most of the audience is aware of it, but RISE now has 3 different packages, for example, of the types of base, premium, and premium plus, right? For those who are not aware of it. Now, what base means is from an actual credentials point of view, earlier we used to call it as SETPA, right? The cloud credits in terms of BDP and what kind of services you could use.
Right.
The base is more about build work zone, for example, on what like Steven talked about or what Christoph talked about in terms of low code, no code, right? With work zone.
Yeah.
Premium covers a lot more with build process automation, build apps, process intelligence, and even for that matter, your actual enterprise agreement credits. Now, with these solutions already available as part of RISE, expectations from the clients, at least the ones which I'm dealing with have been is, from day one, when you come in, how can you use these products to help me speed up the implementation? How can you make sure you're giving me apps which are pre-built, available to deploy, rather than the traditional way of, okay, let me come into your landscape, let me work at your process, let me help you implement it while it takes about 2 years, 3 years for rollouts. People don't have that level of patience nowadays, right? And RISE really has boosted that forward.
Excellent. So Christoph, just kind of coming back to you as we're talking about the change, and you've been doing this for a while and rolled out SAP projects that I think I've come along afterwards and worked on to some early R2 even experience on my side. But I'm curious, as you think about today working with SAP and an SI, a systems integrator like IBM, what do you see as kind of strikingly different, and how do you challenge kind of the potential of what you can achieve today? Your goals, you know, you've kind of highlighted some quick ones, but have to have moved and evolved from what you used to expect, which was operationally running, and up to now how fast you can start to create value. So I'm just kind of curious, how do you see and employ IBM-like organizations, and how do you leverage SAP to kind of do new and different and faster than you would have 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? I think you're on mute.
It actually told me so. What I want to come back to what I said about speed and pace, because I think that is the big differentiator these days. Mm-hmm. Let me use a recent example. We did a system selection that pretty much encompassed in a very fast pace, in the context of an RFI, the early stages of what SAP calls prepare, discover and prepare. So in other words, we didn't even have to pay for it, because the SI was asked as part of the RFI response to, let's say, provide a high-level architecture of the solution, really high level. The intent was to very quickly make a system selection. And oh, by the way, SAP public cloud, SAP's RISE public cloud offering, or CRO public cloud offering 1. The intent was to immediately after that go into design, which is pretty much a blend of the late stages of SAP's prepare phase and then the to some extent the explore phase. And the RFI took 2 months. The blueprint, or the design, if you will, took 2 months. Implementation is intended to take 4 months. So an end-to-end implementation period for a limited scope, admittedly, ERP, that's not a full scope top to bottom ERP, but with a significant number of integrations and interfaces, is somewhere between 8 and 9 months.
Right.
And that's really end-to-end. So in other words, the fast pace is extremely important, was extremely important in this case, and has become more and more important in my previous experience. Actually, the negative example was in not too far recent history, we had a 24 months selection, evaluation, and approval process. And oh, by the way, it never got approved because 24 months later, what triggered the initial inquiry was no longer relevant. It was no longer important. So the more time that goes by, the less important the results become because the business environment, the business priorities have long changed. So this pace is extremely important, and I believe it will become more and more important, although I'm not sure you can get it down to 0. So right now, I think a 6 to 9 months versus the about 18 months for more traditional ERP implementation, I would consider a standard, maybe a best practice, and you will deviate on both sides depending on what the scope is. SAP's RISE implementation, and that's where I think the partners, the SI and SAP itself, will continue to be challenged and asked to assist the business, is to help with the culture change. And the culture change starts with the education and the expectation, what a new approach, the new approach can deliver versus the traditional approach that you can actually, in fact, get from 18 to 6 or to 9 months. And part of this are the accelerators that SAP provides. I would say the most important one is the fit to standard approach instead of the fit to gap approach. In the past, we brought everybody in the business, depending on the scope, together for an as is to be analysis. And with the as is to be, we encourage customizations. We encourage the identification, if you not will, the innovation or invention of non-standard solutions that then had to be customized and cost a lot of money, took a lot of time. The fit to standard approach is different. You look at a pre-configured business process within the system, let's say for order taking, for purchase orders, for payments, for MRP, or and the question is not what do we want it to be, but can we live with that? And I think that's where the SAPs and the SIs of the world are going to provide initially the largest immediate value in fostering this conversation, helping with the culture change that has away from what has led us into this legacy nightmare of many customizations. The other aspect, and that's common to many SaaS solutions, but I love SAP's terminology of activate instead of implement, because just by using a different word, it conveys the fact that you don't have to stand up an infrastructure. You don't have to go out and buy or configure even a virtual environment in the cloud. Everything is pre-configured. You just have to activate it. And I think the mental picture of an activation versus an implementation is significant. Ultimately, I see also significant benefits in an approach that doesn't promote the Big Bang. I voted so often in my career for an incremental implementation, and I would have to go back and try to remember when I won this argument. Most of the time I lost and we did big bangs. But I think the new approach, the new solution, the new methodology allows for much more of an incremental functional approach that allows to take small bites in the spirit of agile and have a fast sequence of functional deliverables. And all of this really translates to speed to value, if you will. And one last example, if you will, with the RISE offering, the public cloud and the private cloud offering, I think equally as much. You have the benefit of immediate availability of functional enhancements that are on SAP's roadmap. You don't have to implement them. They come with the biannually, semi-annually release. And let me give you one example. A CIO friend of mine in a very well-known German consumer brand told me last year that they actually implemented a small company advanced analytics solution to improve forecast accuracy tremendously. I believe he mentioned at the time, and we didn't talk this much about AI 15 months ago, that there was machine learning involved. So these days that would squarely qualify as an AI solution. And they've improved their forecast accuracy tremendously. I don't want to quote a percentage because it probably would be wrong, but astonishingly high. And they had to implement this on an on-prem SAP environment, and it was not trivial, as you can imagine. Sure. These days, you get this with the current release or with the next release. So speed to value, I think, is where all of us, SAP, the SIs, we as the customers are going to be most challenged, where we have to invest most of our efforts, because it's going to be a tremendous culture change, along with the necessary change management within the organizations.
Yeah, that's terrific. Really interesting. It brings to mind, Dharma, I've heard IBM is using AI in some RISE implementations, and AI, what it is, and when it's real. We were doing generative AI webinar last, and hearing all the potential and capability and like what is real, I think is always really interesting to people that are listening in. Could you share an example or two of things that you are currently doing with AI in a SAP RISE kind of environment?
Yeah, sure. I think firstly, right, I mean, when you look at the RISE engagements, even before you can talk about the phases of what really can be implemented in terms of AI, I mean, I would call it the traditional AI and then the Gen AI component of it, right? So let me first talk about the traditional AI piece of what really are we able to achieve already, right? I think most of the people now keep talking about Gen AI and the great things it can do, and as if the whole world has just seen AI, right? I mean, no offense, but
Sure.
AI has been there for quite a while now, right?
Sure.
And we have already seen a huge amount of benefit when we are able to leverage it. And SAP has been at the forefront of it when it comes to some of these AI-based initiatives, right? For example, from an IBM point of view, if you think about it, we've been partnering with SAP almost for 50 years now, and we have a very strong relationship where we've been able to even co-partner and create some of these AI-based solutions for our customers, trying to both work with what SAP has along with what we can actually provide based on what we have created. Now, talking specifically about SAP-based examples, if you think about within finance, right? I mean, the SAP has a great solution called Intelligent Collections for those who are not aware of it. And that's been there in the market for a while now, right? And similarly, within sales and service, SAP has some of the great AI-based solutions. For example, sales order auto completion, right? You just can process the document and you can have the entire sales order just auto completed for you without having to go through the whole process. Similarly, in the context of AI, if I think about from a supply chain, right, from a slotting recommendation in extended warehouse management to replenishment optimization, right, from a predictive point of view, there's been a lot of this stuff already existing today in terms of goods receipt, GRIR, reconciliation, and a lot of these, SAP has been at the forefront trying to embed AI into the solutions to make it more a business-driven component rather than trying to sell AI as a product, right? Because it's not about, hey, I have a great AI tool, why don't you use it? It's not about that, right? It's about how can you embed AI so that each of these, some of the use cases which you just touched upon, can be optimized from a user experience point of view so that you're embedding it into a day-to-day activity, right? Now, that's more from a traditional AI point of view. But if I turn it around, right, talking about the hype cycle from Gartner or talking about how important Gen AI is, I mean, I am responsible within IBM as an overall CTO for SAP Managed Services and for RISE with SAP to not only deliver RISE with SAP for customers as an implementation partner, as an SI, but I also have the responsibility to drive the actual roadmap from a premium supplier point of view, right? Because I've been there from the founding steps we have taken within IBM to establish the entire premium supplier journey. And since last 2 years, I've been setting up the entire technical managed services for our team. We've been delivering it for multiple clients. The question we keep asking clients is, what can we do to use Gen AI to speed up that process? And that's where we've already started using what we call as what's the next code assistant, right? I think most of you would have heard about it, but what can help us with the Ansible capabilities it has the functionality to generate the infrastructure as a code to be able to support that premium supplier based work, what we can deliver. Right now, most of the people might be saying, how do you make sure it doesn't have hallucination? How do you make sure it doesn't generate stuff which you cannot rely on? But if you are using the right combinations of the RAG and the LLM based models of what you can actually leverage, what's the next code assistant can do a great job in that. And we've been able to already prove that by able to generate a lot of this Ansible code, which can actually go ahead and script your system provisioning, right? That's one use case from a technical side of it. But if I turn it around from a functionality point of view, we've been able to use Signavio-based process manager related PPM and files generated, because I think most of you would have heard about the Signavio's process manager and the great functionality it has in terms of being able to document your L3 processes, right? In terms of how you can embed the transactions, the systems and everything into basic business functionality. Now, with that being said, we were able to actually create multiple assets which can consume those inputs of what SAP has to offer and be able to give functionality such as chat with your process. Now imagine a user who doesn't have to log into a system to figure out what their process is. With just one-time documentation done, they are able to actually go into an assistant and start querying against it to say, all right, give me she's just giving us a diagram as an input and saying, what does this diagram do? Right? Tell me about who are the actors, what are the systems, what all processes is it cutting across, or I'm about to approve a notification workflow. Give me the dependent steps of what are allowed for me to be performed, or give me next best action recommendation. Right? This is just some natural language queries which you can actually type in, and the actual process configuration tool is able to give you the recommendations of what next should you perform as a user, without having to go through the entire process or without having to remember what you should be performing. So it's getting to a point where real low-code, no-code approach is being brought in, and we are already able to implement it for our clients. And we are not just talking about some futuristic roadmap here, right? It's here, it's now, and we're able to leverage it with both from a technical AI, whereas the traditional AI, when it's a technical, more from IT ops point of view, the traditional part of it, and then with the Gen AI, on how you can infuse it into every business activity what you can perform, right? Especially functionalities around content generation, summarization, even for that matter, automated email content generation for customers, and notifying the concerned teams within organization, letting them know how exactly that is going to impact them.
Great. Yeah, that's cool. I like when they're real world examples as opposed to us all theorizing of what's possible. Which, Guru, it makes me wonder, how you obviously, SAP interacts with it a lot and has a lot of deployment done by systems integrators or partners like IBM and a lot of the rest of us too. And I'm curious, as you think about it, and as you heard it kind of develop, what was the vision of how systems integrators and partners should think of taking advantage of RISE? And I've sat in a seat where I watched what we had intended to do be misunderstood or misused. So I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about what we should do and a little bit of be cautious over in these spaces just from your experience and watching this all roll out and unfold.
Yeah, I think education is extremely important in the sense that people who are embarking on this journey, whether it's the customer or even whether it's the SAP account executive that is going to be involved, or the SI, they need to be in complete sync on what the offering is able to provide, because a lot of things can be missed in translation. You need to be completely aware of what the contract is, how are you structuring the contract, how are you able to assign the roles and responsibilities. Everybody has got a specific role. Customer's got a very key role. SAP's got a key role. SI has got a key role. And being able to understand the roles and responsibilities, we have an R&R document that's probably about 1,000 pages long, 1,000 tasks in there. But it is extremely clear, and it is the right people with people like Dharma and his team would know exactly what he is doing and what is part of the TMS team within SAP. And in some cases, he takes over completely everything. But there is a clear understanding that needs to be laid out. Number two, even when you are thinking about the contract structure, when Christoph was mentioning that there is an opportunity to do an agile-based implementation, it's very, very important to understand that it is possible with RISE. We don't need to plan for a contract wherein a lot of the software consumption happens up front. We can actually ramp up the contract in a way wherein it aligns with the project methodology. It aligns with also a rollout strategy. Maybe you are rolling out to different divisions over the different years because there is change management that's happening in between. So understanding the contract structure and being able to design your contract structure in a manner that is amenable for the customer. At the same time, not putting a significant pressure on the SI. I want it right now. Yes, we want to make sure that everything is done immediately, but there is a logical sequence in which you can actually consume it, and you want to be able to design your contract to be able to take advantage. Otherwise, you're putting a lot of money up front.
Right.
Take advantage of the SaaS model. Those are all things that are very important. And I think where Dharma really touched on is SIs now have the flexibility to not really just focus on the technical side of things. They can actually expand on the functional areas. That is where the biggest bang for the buck is, both for the customers in their return of investment. Gone are the days wherein the focus on the technical stack being up and running. That's not going to be the key area where you need to focus your investments in. You need to really take advantage of what business technology platform has got to offer, what AGI has got to offer, what the green ledger comes with RISE that you can take advantage of and apply it towards your business operations and make sure that you are realizing those benefits. So those are some of the points I want to highlight.
Yeah, that's terrific. So Stephen, it brings me back to one of the things that I'm always interested in. You are essentially a customer to us. All of us that are delivering solutions into customers. And I always enjoy when I get to sit down outside of a sales cycle or an implementation cycle to hear more like day in your life of you trying to work between the business and your partners and SIs. And I learned in a lot of those conversations that we as partners often come in with too much of a filter headset on what we think you need or what we think we want to deliver for you. But we often don't really understand fully what it is that you're seeking. Like, where do you want us to provide value and support what you've kind of set up as an expectation in the organization? So teach us a little bit about how could we be more savvy as we engage and think about more life from inside the business, if you don't mind teaching us a little bit.
I wouldn't necessarily call it teaching, but I think between all of us, based on years of experience and lessons learned, there's quite a few things that I think SAP and probably system integrators may misjudge for critical success factors in implementation and adoption. And it's going to span pretty much this last hour because everybody's talked about key components in this area. One of the key areas I think is change management. That's probably one of the top ones. SAP implementations often require significant process changes, system adoption and user training. Underestimating these type of impacts of the change on the employees can lead to resistance and low user adoption rates. SAP and the integrators, they should try to invest in robust change management strategies to help guide the business. Simply telling them that this is what you need to do doesn't necessarily always work. It's a symbiotic relationship. So these strategies should include clear communication. Obviously, from day one, stakeholder engagement. You have to keep them in line as you progress through the roadmap. Training programs and provide ongoing support. As a solutions architect, part of our role, basically, for the lack of a better term, is we have to hold their hands as we walk through this. We have to make sure that they're comfortable in these processes, and that's all part of the change management strategy. Another key area is data migration. Migrating data from legacy systems to SAP can be complex and time-consuming. Many businesses can miscalculate the effort required to clean and transform the data to ensure that it's accurate and it gains the integrity necessary in the new system. So you have to provide proper planning, data governance, data quality checks. They should all be prioritized to avoid these issues when you do the migration activities. I believe my fellow panelists talked about the customization and configuration, which is another overlooked area because it's very broad, but there's specific components of it that's really good, and there's some that's kind of bad. SAP provides extensive customization options to tailor the system to meet the specific needs, especially in the new HANA Enterprise. However, this is the bad part. Excessive customization can lead to complexity. It's going to provide higher maintenance cost in the long run and difficulties in future upgrades. SAPs and SIs should come up with a careful balance for those customizations and weigh those against the benefits and the long-term impact. Another thing I think we've all experienced is the integration with external systems. Businesses often rely on various external systems or applications that need to be seamlessly integrated with SAP. Underestimating those complexities of these systems can result in data silos.
Yeah.
The processes become inefficient at that level, and then you have to develop manual workarounds.
Yeah.
A thorough understanding of the integration requirements up front and the proper planning is crucial to ensure smooth operations across the different systems. Something that I stress as an architect is we need to insert the component of performance and scalability during any implementation effort. SAP's implementations should consider both the current and the future growth requirements. Undervaluing the scalability needs of the business can lead to the performance issues and most of the time system bottlenecks. You need to ensure that there's proper sizing, the infrastructure is planned accordingly, and iterative performance testing should be conducted to ensure that the system can handle increasing data loads and volumes and transaction loads. One of the last things that I can think of is ongoing support and maintenance. It should always be integrated during the post-implementation phase, not to be confused with the maintenance activities as you implement. But these are key aspects to ensure that the production environment is stable and it meets the business needs and provides the value necessary. The business needs to conduct, supports to address those system issues, handle the deployment enhancements that are going to come out, and keep up with regulatory changes depending on the industry that you're in. So SAP and SIs, they must provide long-term support plans to include regular system updates, bug fixes, and proactive monitoring to ensure that the system runs smoothly. The business has a good idea going into it of what is necessary, but the experience that SAP and the SIs bring to the table will help them understand the proper sequence and the steps to ensure that the implementation is successful. I have always told my clients and my customers that SAP is an excellent application. It's usually the implementation and the adoption of the processes and how you implement it that usually cause the negative aspects and the negative connotations of SAP.
Right.
So by recognizing all of these potential areas and addressing them proactively, all the technical stakeholders can better meet the needs of the business.
Very good. That's comprehensive. Thank you. Gives me, there are a lot of things that, as you said it, I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So I think it's also just imperative upon us to slow down and listen more sometimes, especially early and then through these engagements, and anticipate. Change management obviously is kind of critical to technology deployments in general. I think a lot of times wildly underestimated, and I've been in a lot of projects where it was just flat left off. There was nobody contemplated how we could get our people from here to here. The people, well, what do you mean the people? Why are we worried about the people?
People, process, and technology.
Right.
Like I said, it's all symbiotic. You can't do one without the others. It just doesn't work.
Excellent. So we're kind of winding down on the questions that I had thought about, and definitely now is a good time if you have questions for the panelists. Some of them have started to come in. So I'm going to pick out a few, and I'll kind of have, I'll have maybe Guru, you can start on one of these, and then I'll invite the others of you to add. One of the first questions that came in was about small to mid-sized enterprises, and the kind of general question was, can S4HANA work for small to mid-sized enterprises? I think this is a bit of a softball question, but go ahead, Guru, why don't you start us off?
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think it kind of, when we were discussing one of the key releases that came out earlier this year, I don't know if you guys have heard, Grow with SAP, and I think Christoph mentioned that in his conversation. Grow with SAP is the public cloud version of RISE with SAP. I mean, RISE was coined as a term back in 2021, where in January when Christian released it. And what we realized was there is an opportunity for us to, it becomes a little bit confusing when you use the same terminology for both private cloud and public cloud. So just to make it easy for customers, we came up with the terminology Grow with SAP. Grow with SAP is more a public cloud-based S4HANA solution. But prior to determining which one makes sense, you should work with your SAP account executive to do what is called as a digital discovery assessment. What that does is it kind of lays out your company requirements, your industry requirements in which you fall in, and based on your size, based on your business process areas, it kind of gives you an output as which is the right deployment option that is recommended for you as a company, taking into consideration the uniqueness of your business, and then providing you the right components. And another beautiful thing with SAP is it is not anymore a monolith ERP. It is a component ERP based solution. So you can pick and choose which portions of your business process needs to be within the core, which one can take advantage of a line of business solution, let us say a digital manufacturing cloud, or which can take advantage of a success factors from a HR standpoint. What combinations of those would really make sense to run your business? So just want to, Christoph, you had any?
Maybe one additional data point. The example I used earlier, we started in our evaluation by SAP Business by Design and pivoted to the S4HANA public cloud offering, which was about the same complexity, same timeline, about the same cost. And obviously much more future growth, scalability opportunity.
And I think just to, not to again add to it, but to one point Guru mentioned, right? So if you're not fully comfortable with what suits what, for those who are not aware, RISE with SAP now has a new edition of move responsibilities added in that 1500 plus line items which Guru mentioned, right? Where it clearly says that SAP is now responsible. Do you have them request what can be the business case which you can actually put together for your S4HANA by doing the S4HANA readiness check, by doing the actual process insights part of it, by doing the custom code analysis. So all of this part of it as a move section within your RISE with SAP roles and responsibilities, which means that when you sign for the contract, you will request SAP to perform all of this for you as a one-time service, and then for you to be able to make a lot more informed decisions, which early you would have to have some SI performing that for you. I'm not saying you can replace SIs with that, but that at least gives you a great starting point to establish your baseline and then build upon it depending upon the use case if you want to. But that's something of a hidden functionality if you have not known about these roles and responsibilities, which can help you immensely overall.
Right.
What comes to my attention over my career is SAP originally was for really large enterprises, kind of Fortune 100 to Fortune 500, because the barrier to entry was huge. The initial investment was huge. And I think a lot of RISE, that the SME, small and mid-sized enterprises, I think it's a way easier to approach now all of SAP's capabilities without needing that large kind of initial everything, right? Resources, and not just hard dollars, but people and capabilities and infrastructure understanding and IT organizations, and all that stuff is now with RISE, I think, has really been simplified so that you don't, if SAP suits what you need to do as a business, you don't really have to worry as much about the size of your business, especially from the beginning when I started with it.
But I also want to add that I don't want RISE to take the place of a solutions architect, because a lot of those capabilities pretty much should be done up front as well and should be system agnostic. So capabilities assessment, obviously a stakeholder analysis to ensure that you have all of the business needs documented. That fits in line with the architectural framework of what RISE provides. So it's a win-win across the board. It makes my job a lot easier, to be quite honest. So,
excellent. One of the questions, a topic that we didn't really touch on too much, and I think greater and greater curiosity or security has become a very dominant part of all implementations and deployments that I've been a part of. And 15 years ago, nobody talked about it. Like, comically, no one talked about it. And now it's kind of a center point of every proposal. So I wanted to see, maybe Guru, if you can kind of open with SAP's point of view. But how do you guys think about security and address it, especially if you're talking about cloud and cloud hosting solutions? That's people turning over a lot of critical data. And with that goes a lot of risk and some fear. So how do you guys talk to it right now?
No, actually, just to let you know, in our sales process, one of the earlier conversations that we need to have as part of our customer interaction is to bring on our security experts right up front. Obviously, we need to, it goes without the fact that customers, as they are handing over their systems to be hosted by SAP, there is obvious concerns of fear. But clearly, what SAP offers is a list of certifications and audit reports that have been completed, ISO certifications that have been done not only initially, but every year, sometimes half a year. The SOC reports 1, 2, and 3, and then whatever our hyperscalers are able to offer to us, we bring it up front to ensure that the systems are secure. Probably the fact that we are able to build upon the security that we are not only doing for our public cloud, we are able to drive it down to the private cloud entities, and we are keeping that logically and physically, separated from a public cloud type of instance. The private cloud edition, primarily, just wanted to highlight from a RISE standpoint, is your instance. That instance is not being shared by outside of your customer network. It's an extension of your network. So you actually are expanding your network to release the IP addresses and the CIDR blocks to support where the system needs to reside. And it's no different than putting your system on any hyperscaler, except that now we are responsible for ensuring that security is top grade, enterprise grade, and a lot of built-in foundational solutions and tools are included as part of RISE, because we are not just responsible for you, we are responsible for a whole host of customers. So these are not investments that you really need to put in. We are putting those investments as part of it, and we are certifying it yearly basis. We are ensuring that we are meeting with your CISOs upfront. And I live in the federal world, so I know how the security works over there. So I support government customers, aerospace and defense customers. So their security requirements are top-notch, ITAR-related requirements or FedRAMP requirements. So we work on hyperscalers, specifically like AWS GovCloud or Azure Gov, to support those specific requirements with cleared resources on top of it.
Perfect. We're at the top of the hour, but Stephen, for you or Christoph, anything business side that we've missed or should think about and you've worked through from security or regulated environments, or anything else that might be worthwhile for us to hear?
You've touched on the data migration challenge. The quality of data is paramount. No advanced analytics, no AI solution will work really well with bad data. SAP doesn't work well with bad data. So you can't overstate the importance of making sure that the data that gets into SAP is complete. SAP has tremendous capabilities in importing these data, but it still is something that can't be underestimated and often the long pole in the tent. And then, I just can't overemphasize the importance of trying to simplify the environment. We received one question about supporting a company's digital transformation journey. And as we simplify the environment, we reduce the effort, the time, and the cost to realize every single digital transformation on this journey, which has been one of the largest obstacles in the past. Too costly, too time consuming, couldn't be done in time to realize the value.
Excellent.
And
any last thoughts?
Yeah, on top of that, security can mean a number of different things from both a business perspective as well as a system. Guru touched upon the capabilities of what SAP is able to do. And it does all of that, and it does it very well. But in order to do that, it has to understand how the security and what the information that is specific to the security is going to be used for. Europe standards for credit card transactions may differ from that in North America. And within North America, you've got Canada considerations, PII that you have to deal with. You've got HIPAA regulations, which are a little bit different in the Northern America state versus the Southern. I mean, there's a number of different things. So identifying those processes up front to understand how the data is going to flow through the supply chain and a business perspective, and then the security components can ensure that that data is masked appropriately. So SAP is only going to address the security compliance as much as the business tells them everything that the security needs to address. So the business has to work with SAP in order to ensure this is done correctly. So
that's a great point. Dharma, last word? Anything we missed there?
No, I think it's been a comprehensive one, and yes, there are some nuances which people need to think about, but I think upfront having a cloud advisory architect or a proper cloud solution architect engaged through the journey to kick off the solutioning followed by the design is very important, because while RISE can do many things, if you don't understand it properly, you are going to run into some of these things which you don't want to, right? And the best way is to be well planned about it.
Sure. Terrific. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining us for the last hour of your time.